You are the type of owner who has looked into your dog's eyes and wondered what they were thinking, whether they truly understand you, whether what passes between you is something deeper than instinct. This story is about a dog who sat at the same spot every single day for 2 years after his owner didn't come home. What the neighbors witnessed during those 2 years will permanently change the way you understand what your dog feels and what loyalty really costs. Most of us assume that when we leave, our dogs simply wait, that they do not carry it the way we do, that real grief is a human burden, and animals just adapt, forget, move on. But what happened in a quiet neighborhood, watched by ordinary people who had no reason to lie, challenges every comfortable assumption we've ever made about the interior life of a dog. This is not a rescue story with a tidy ending. It's something rarer, a story about faithfulness without a reward. The neighborhood was ordinary in every way that matters. Narrow streets, familiar faces, the kind of place where people know each other's routines without ever making an effort to learn them. They knew when the old man walked his dog each morning. They knew the route down past the corner bakery, left along the stone wall back through the square. They knew the dog, too. Medium-sized, unremarkable in color, the kind of dog whose name you'd learn eventually but whose presence you'd notice immediately. There was something about the way he moved beside the old man. Not ahead, not lagging, exactly beside. Like the two of them had negotiated the distance years ago, and neither had thought to renegotiate. Then one morning, the old man didn't come out, and the dog sat down at the front step and waited. At first the neighbors assumed it was temporary. Maybe the man was sick. Maybe he'd gone to visit family. Dogs wait. That's what they do. Nobody thought much of it on day 1 or even day 3. But by the end of the first week, something had shifted in the neighborhood's collective awareness. The dog wasn't pacing, wasn't whimpering at windows or scratching at the door. He was sitting, facing the street, in the exact direction the old man always came home from. That specificity matters, because it wasn't random vigil behavior. The dog wasn't watching every direction with anxious, unfocused energy. He was watching one direction, the direction that meant coming home. Here's what nobody tells you about canine grief: it doesn't look the way we expect it to. We expect wailing, restlessness, the obvious signals we'd recognize from our own species. What dogs actually do, what grief looks like in an animal wired for loyalty rather than language, is this: sustained orientation, directed waiting, a posture that says, without a single sound, "I know where you went and I am here when you come back." The old man had died, quietly, the way many old men do. In the early morning before the city woke up, his family came, the apartment was sorted, arrangements were made, and in all the necessary movement of human grief and logistics, the dog had been passed to a neighbor, someone willing to feed him, provide shelter, ensure he wasn't left without care. It was a practical solution to a practical problem. But no one had asked the dog, and so he waited. The neighbor fed him, he ate, he drank. He wasn't neglected. That part is important because this story isn't about abandonment or suffering in the way we usually frame it. This dog had food and water and a warm place to sleep. What he didn't have was his person. And every single morning he made his way back to that front step, and he sat, and he faced the street. There's a researcher named Alexandra Horowitz who has spent years studying what dogs actually perceive, not what we project onto them, but what the evidence suggests is happening inside their minds. Her work, and the work of others in the field of canine cognition, points to something that was once dismissed as anthropomorphism, but is now taken seriously. Dogs form individual attachments that are neurologically distinct. It's not just that they like the person who feeds them. The attachment involves specific scent memory, specific behavioral prediction, specific emotional calibration built up over thousands of shared hours. In plain terms, your dog knows you, not the role you play. You, and when you are gone, that knowledge doesn't simply erase, it stays. It generates expectation. It generates waiting. The neighbors started bringing him things. A piece of food here, a gentle touch there. Some of them sat with him on the step in the evenings. Not because he was distressed again, he wasn't frantic. He was simply present in a way that made humans want to be present too. There's something about witnessed loyalty that acts on people. It makes them quieter, more deliberate. The neighborhood began, almost without noticing, to organize itself around a dog sitting on a step. By the third month, people were timing their walks to pass by the step, not to intervene, just to see, just to bear witness to something they didn't have words for yet. One of the neighbors, a woman in her 60s who had lost her husband 2 years before the old man died, later described it this way. She said watching that dog made her feel less alone in her own grief. Not because the dog was performing sadness, but because the dog was doing what she had wanted to do and hadn't allowed herself. Just sitting, just waiting, not moving on because someone said she should, not adapting on a schedule that suited everyone else. She said the dog was doing grief right. That's a reframe worth sitting with, because we live in a culture that treats grief as a problem to be solved, a process with stages and a presumed end. We give people time off and then expect them back. We say things like he would have wanted you to be happy, and what we mean is please stop reminding us that loss doesn't have a deadline. The dog didn't know any of that. The dog had no social contract about appropriate mourning periods. The dog just loved one person. That person was gone, and so the dog waited. Not out of confusion. That's the assumption most people make when they first hear this story. Oh, the poor thing doesn't understand that he's dead. But here's what 2 years of witnessed behavior suggests, and what the neighborhood came to believe, person by person. Slowly, this dog understood exactly as much as a creature of profound feeling can understand. He understood absence. He understood direction. He understood that the person he had organized his entire existence around had gone somewhere and had not come back. Whether he understood death in the way we do, with its finality and its vocabulary, is almost beside the point. He understood loss, and he responded to it with everything he had, which was presence, faithfulness, the refusal to redirect that love towards someone easier to love. Around month 7, a family approached about adopting him. They had children, a yard, obvious warmth. By every objective measure, it was a good home. The neighbor who had been caring for him agreed to let them try, and so the dog went. For 11 days he stayed in the new house, ate their food, accepted their kindness. On the 12th day, he was back at the step. Nobody could explain how he had navigated the route. The new home was not close. There were streets and intersections, and the thousand small obstacles that make such a journey seem impossible for an animal without a map. But dogs do not navigate with maps. They navigate with something older and more accurate. Smell patterned the magnetic pull of the place where they last felt whole. He was back at the step, facing the street. After that, no one tried to move him again. The second year was quieter than the first. Not because the dog had given up, his posture never changed, but because the neighborhood had absorbed him. He had become part of the texture of that place. People set out water without being asked. Children learned without being told to approach him gently. An informal rotation of care developed, completely unorganized, completely reliable. The dog had created community without intending to. His faithfulness had become a kind of gravity. There's a word in Portuguese, saudade, that describes a longing for something deeply loved that may never return. A beautiful sadness that doesn't want to be cured. Other languages have versions of it. English, notably, does not. We're a language built for resolution, for action verbs and forward motion. We do not have great vocabulary for the kind of love that stays even when staying hurts. But watching that dog, the neighbors found themselves needing that word, inventing their own versions of it. Some of them wrote about it later. Some of them changed how they talked to their own dogs, their own people after. And then, 26 months after the old man didn't come home, the dog died. He died on the step. In the morning, facing the street. The neighbor who found him said he looked like he had simply decided the waiting was done, that there was nothing violent or distressed in his posture. He had laid down, which he almost never did on the step, and he had died the way he had waited quietly, in one direction, with complete commitment. The neighborhood grieved him the way they hadn't quite grieved the old man loudly, collectively, with flowers left on the step and photographs pinned to the wall and conversations that went late into the night. Which is its own kind of strange truth. Sometimes it takes a witness to teach us how to mourn. Here's what stayed with every person who watched those 2 years unfold. It wasn't the sadness of it. Sadness is easy. Sadness comes and goes and leaves us more or less where it found us. What stayed was the challenge. The quiet, insistent challenge of watching a creature organize its entire remaining life around love for one person, with no expectation of reward, no narrative about what it was doing, no audience it was performing for. The dog wasn't trying to teach anyone anything. He was just faithful, in the oldest, most demanding sense of that word. Faithful when it cost something. Faithful when it would have been easier to transfer that devotion to someone new. Faithful not because it felt good, but because that's what fidelity actually is, the thing you do when every practical reason to stop doing it has already arrived. And if an animal can do that, if a creature without our language or our frameworks or our self-conscious awareness of how grief should look, if that creature can hold its love that steadily, across 2 years, across distance, across every offered alternative, then what does that ask of us? Not in a shaming way, in an honest one. What does it mean to love someone the way that dog loved that old man? Not the easy love, the love that costs nothing because the person is right there, right in front of you, filling the space they always fill. But the love that faces the direction they went and keeps facing it. The love that doesn't reroute just because rerouting is available. When you look into your dog's eyes the way you've done 100 times, in the ordinary quiet of an ordinary evening, you are looking into something that is capable of exactly this. Not as a theoretical capacity, not as a poetic metaphor, as a fact. Your dog is capable of the kind of loyalty this story describes. It lives in them, fully formed, waiting for a reason to show itself. You gave your dog that reason the first time you came home and they met you at the door. Every day since then, you've been the direction they face. That's not a small thing. It is possibly the least small thing in the world. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who loves their dog the way that old man was loved, quietly, completely, without needing to explain it. And if you've ever looked at your dog and felt something you couldn't quite name, go look at them right now. Because they've been looking back at you this whole time, in exactly the way this story described. That's where we'll pick this up next. Thanks for watching. If you loved this video, scan the QR code on the screen right now to subscribe and join the Pawsome Life family. Give your dog a belly rub for us, and we will see you in the next video.